a monarch whose corporeal form was disintegrating even as he drew breath, exuding foul pus and decaying tissue that permeated the air, detectable from distant chambers. A sovereign who transformed the sacred bond of matrimony into a decree of doom, rendering the Tower of London the most dreaded fortress in all of England. Welcome to the unvarnished chronicle of Henry VIII, and I assure you the revelations that await will eclipse your darkest visions, rendering them mere shadows of serenity. The common perception of Henry VIII paints him as a robust, jovial monarch with a penchant for marital discord. Yet the authentic narrative unveils a far more harrowing reality, so profoundly aberrant that scholars across eras have labored to temper the brutality of this tyrant's enduring shadow. We speak of a ruler whose suspicions burgeoned into an all-consuming dread, compelling him to slumber amidst armed arsenals, whose voracious appetites would appall even the most dedicated gluttons, and whose dominion over women transcended mere capital punishment, delving into sophisticated torments that might evoke admiration from the most calculated predators of our time. Before we embark upon this descent into abomination, I implore you to subscribe to this channel and share in the comments the locale from which you join us. Your voices span the world, forging a tapestry of shared inquiry. Now, steel your resolve, for once the veil is lifted on Henry VIII's true essence, your understanding of the Tudor epoch and the perils of absolute authority will be irrevocably altered. Let us commence with the most visceral revelation. In the twilight of his reign, Henry VIII had devolved into a corporeal nightmare, a spectacle from the annals of Gothic lore. This was no mere corpulence or infirmity. His form had morphed into an abomination that repulsed even the hardened souls of the medieval age, accustomed as they were to pestilence and squalor. Henry's metamorphosis from a vigorous, youthful heir to this ambulatory terror originated in 1536, amid a calamitous jousting mishap that reshaped his destiny. At Greenwich Palace, during a grand tournament, the king was hurled from his steed, rendered insensible for more than 2 hours, a state akin to death in an age bereft of advanced healing arts. Upon his revival, observers discerned profound alterations in his demeanor. The once tempered sovereign grew increasingly erratic, consumed by visions of betrayal, his temperament veering toward unbridled ferocity. Yet the corporeal ravages proved even more grotesque. The accident inflicted grievous wounds upon his legs, lesions that festered eternally, evolving into suppurating ulcers that ravaged his lower extremities. These were no trifling abrasions, but vast, weeping craters that perpetually discharged pus, sanguine fluid, and necrotic matter. The odor was so pervasive that attendants would retch upon nearing his majesty. Chronicles of the era recount the miasma wafting through multiple chambers, compelling servants to clutch scented cloths to their visages while ministering to him, with many succumbing to nausea from the assault alone. The royal healers themselves, confronted with the abhorrent state of his limbs, fabricated pretexts to evade examinations, despite the peril of treason inherent in defying the king's command. As the years advanced, Henry's girth expanded to monumental scales. By his waning days, he tipped the scales at nearly 400 pounds, his midriff spanning an astonishing 54 inches a girth, exceeding the stature of many subjects. His countenance swelled grotesquely, his eyes reduced to narrow fissures amid the adipose expanse, his neck vanishing into a seamless swell, evoking the image of an inflated orb perched upon broad shoulders. Mobility eluded him utterly. Bespoke mechanisms, chairs equipped with ropes and casters, were devised to convey him through his opulent halls. Squads of retainers maneuvered these apparatuses, ferrying the decaying potentate from one domain to another. But herein lies the pinnacle of revulsion. During these transits, fragments of gangrenous tissue would detach from his limbs, scattering trails of putrid sovereign remnants across the palace floors. Dedicated servants trailed in his wake, armed with linens and vessels, to gather the fallen Decay. Envision the torment of a role encompassing the collection of royal necrosis. Such duties inflicted profound psychic wounds. Many abandoned their exalted posts, forsaking the prestige of direct service to the crown. The toll upon the court was cataclysmic. Those who once vied for proximity to the throne now recoiled from royal summonses. The fusion of his monstrous visage, the infernal stench, and his capricious savagery rendered courtly existence a perpetual ordeal for all ensnared within. Nevertheless, Henry's somatic decline merely heralded the saga of dread. The cranial trauma from the joust had irrevocably warped his psyche. transmogrifying a facade of civility into a relish for inflicted agony. The composer of tender verses and melodies evolved into an arbiter of doom, decreeing deaths for infinitesimal offences and compelling witnesses to behold the demise of kin before their own annihilation. Contemporary physicians posit a confluence of afflictions. Alongside morbid obesity and chronic ulcers, Cushing's syndrome likely accounted for his explosive adiposity, volatile humours, and unyielding wounds. Diabetes may have exacerbated the infections, amplifying his torment. The poignant paradox endures. This autarch, who invoked divine mandate and proclaimed celestial election, faltered in mastering his own vessel. In his twilight, aides bore portable commodes in his train, for he could scarcely traverse chambers without mishaps the executor of the irreverent now unravelling in profound indignity. The mnemonic verse of Henry's consorts divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived, scarcely grazes the surface of the cerebral anguish these women withstood. His machinations eclipsed physical demise, weaving intricate webs of mental devastation, rendering union with England's sovereign the apex of feminine dread. Consider Catherine of Aragon, his inaugural queen, enduring protracted psychic siege. Far from a mere dissolution, she faced methodical seclusion, degradation, and suspicions of a poisoned end. When Henry's gaze alighted upon Anne Boleyn, he annulled their quarter-century bond, deeming it void ab initio before the almighty branding Catherine an illicit consort for decades. Yet the malice deepened. He barred her from their offspring, Mary, wielding the child as a blade against maternal bonds. Conceive the desolation of maternal estrangement, decreed by a spouse's revisionist decree. Catherine's latter years unfolded in virtual captivity, stripped of regal honours, severed from allies and kin, perpetually menaced with the scaffold should she contest his narrative. Henry's stratagems were unyielding. Affectionate tokens one dawn, treasonous accusations the next, coerced attestations of invalidity, only to be rescinded for fresh demands. This relentless flux of peril eroded her vitality, manifesting in gastric maladies attributed to unrelenting duress or insidious toxins. Upon her demise in 1536, solitude enveloped her, save for steadfast retainers. Henry spurned her obsequies and denied Mary farewell. Catherine's valedictory missives, imploring clemency for their progeny and affirming enduring devotion, echoed unanswered the faithful consort of decades dismissed without acknowledgement. Anne Boleyn's ordeal unveiled Henry's aptitude for orchestrated sadism. Dissatisfied, he engineered a labyrinthine plot to amplify her torment pre-execution. He tormented her minstrel, Mark Smeaton, until false admissions of liaison emerged, then ensnared 4 others, including sibling George, extracting fabricated confessions. The anguish of beholding innocence ruined by proximity must have shattered her spirit. Climaxing in cruelty, Henry compelled Anne to observe the decapitations of all 5, her brother's head aloft for the throng, a calculated fracture of her psyche ere her own fate. Initially slated for immolation, her sentence shifted to the axe, with a Gallic specialist summoned, prolonging her agony through anticipation. Confined in the tower, Anne oscillated betwixt mania and serenity, laughter yielding to protracted supplications the weight of fabricated guilt and witnessed carnage fraying her reason. Catherine Howard's narrative chills with its predation upon youth, scarcely beyond adolescence when wed to the decrepit, suppurating colossus in his 40s. The nuptial chamber alone evoked trauma, intimacy with decay incarnate. Upon unearthing her premarital liaisons, Henry's reprisal exposed his vindictive core. He legislated treason for concealing carnal histories from the crown, a narcissistic edict reshaping jurisprudence over personal affront. Beyond statutes, he immured her in the tower for moons, dispatching missives oscillating from illusory reprieve to vivid execution vignettes. Such oscillation precipitated collapses. Wardens chronicled her muteness interspersed with tower, resounding shrieks. At the block, she appeared prematurely aged, stress etching years upon her form. Jane Seymour, oft deemed fortunate for natural expiry post-childbed, illuminates Henry's dehumanization of consorts as mere progenitors. Succumbing after Edward's birth following protracted travail, Henry's grief proved fleeting. Mere days post, funeral, matrimonial overtures resumed. Accounts hint at directives favouring the heir over the mother, reducing Jane to expendable conduit. Anne of Cleves, annulled yet spared, endured grand-scale manipulation, coerced acquiescence under execution's shadow. feigning gratitude for survival while embracing public erasure of her queenship, a lifetime of feigned irrelevance. Catherine Parr, the enduring consort, teetered on the precipice. Her arrest warrant for heresy signed, she salvaged herself via obsequious flattery, framing debates as quests for his enlightenment. Yet envision the ceaseless vigilance, every utterance weighed against lethal caprice, matrimony as perpetual peril. The inexorable truth, these women were ensnared, sans recourse, divorce treasonous, flight fatal, resistance familial ruin. Bound to a progressively abhorrent and perilous spouse, liberation dawned solely in demise. If contemporary gastronomic feats astound, Henry's repasts dwarf them. He devoured as if intent on exhausting England's bounty, habits verging on derangement by modern measure. In maturity, he ingested nigh 5,000 calories daily, double an athlete's quota despite immobility. Volume paled beside the ceremonial zeal and suspicious rites, elevating meals to eerie spectacles. A banquet might encompass a roasted swine, sundry fowls, diverse piscines, bread heaps, and wine sufficient for legions. His sculleries proffered 800 viands daily, employing 200 souls, ceaselessly surpassing modern eateries. Henry ascribed arcane virtues to victuals: swan for grace, despite mechanical crutches; venison for prowess, though horsemanship eluded him; oysters for virility, oblivious to his repugnance; rituals bordered lunacy; fare sampled by tiers of tasters, delayed half hours for latent toxins; kitchens hermetic, guarded at every juncture; ingredients scrutinized by cascades of overseers; dining unfolded as courtly theatre; hours long amid assemblies, feigning admiration whilst his aroma induced queasiness; collective pretense masked revulsion; dissent equated to sedition; meals as communal torment; paranoia prescribed plebeian fare like roots and grains, deeming them infra-dig, favouring deleterious excesses amid national scarcities. His gluttony siphoned staples from subjects, decisions forged amid binges and inebriation, pacts sealed, conflicts ignited, verdicts rendered in stupor. This veracity intertwined with decay, pain spurred gorging, inertia bred indulgence, a spiral hastening ruin. Servants feared fatal feasts, accounts depict retching followed by demands anew, his capacious maw insatiable. Psychically, sustenance embodied dominion amid betrayal, feasts asserting supremacy as faculties waned, waste appalled, remnants discarded or canid fodder, emblematic of regal profligacy. Physicians, muzzled by treason's spectre, observed self-destruction; sans intervention, the authority enabling excess sealed his doom. Henry VIII's suspicions transcended idiosyncrasy, metastasizing into a plague afflicting his realm, forging a panopticon rivaling despotic regimes. In senescence, conviction of universal conspiracy warped existence into a labyrinth of dread, trust eroded, utterances lethal. Nocturnal defenses betrayed profundity, crossbows primed bedside, blades beneath cushions, sentinels within chambers, rotated lest familiarity breed treachery. Watchers watched, bedrooms as bastions, palaces morphed into citadels, clandestine conduits for evasion, apertures for espionage, acoustics for interception, fostering omnipresent vigilance, dialogues shadowed, espionage webs entangled, informants shadowing peers, familial bonds incentivized to fracture progeny, denouncing sires, consorts betraying mates, retainers informing on lords. Society prioritized fealty over affinity, suspicion lethal, culinary safeguards absurd, sealed preparations, tiered verifications, utensils essayed repasts as campaigns, staff terrorized by contamination's blame, even progeny suspect. Mary and Elizabeth surveilled as insurgents, childhood scarred, shaping psyches enduringly. Matrimonial probes? Loyalty assayed via artifices, feigned discourses. Simulated maladies, spouses shadowed, privacy illusory, unions carceral, preemptive purges, executions for presaged perfidy, dreams as evidence, exeter's doom from nocturnal visions, loyalty, no shield, contagion permeated, court as intrigue's hive, resentments festering, realm as distrust's domain, relations politicized. Tragically, paranoia birthed disloyalty it sought to quash, isolating Henry in self-wrought solitude, charisma yielding to tyranny, safety illusory. Ironically, measures fomented threats, resentment brewing plots, delusions self-realizing. One might presume demise curtailed Henry's havoc, yet his cadaver perpetuated pandemonium, a posthumous tableau of grotesquerie mirroring his sovereignty. Final fortnights evoked infernal visions, colossal frame borne by mechanisms, necrotic shreds trailing, odor eclipsing urban cesspools, healers fleeing to purge, deathbed, integument taut from bloat, humanoid semblance lost helpless amid abused attendants, divine claimant incontinent, dignity dissolved. Demise the 28th of January 1547. Confirmation delayed by horror, corpse gaseous, coffined in leaded layers yet en route to Windsor, pressure erupted, effluvia spewing, procession halted for sordid sanitation. Canines lapped leaked remnants the anointed as carrion. Interment fraught, grave collapses under burden, odors lingering moons, whispers of spectral unrest likely effluvia, yet folklore deemed eternal corruption. Handlers perished post-haste, perhaps infected or shattered. Demise encapsulated reign, vitality's chaos persisting, corruption uncontainable. Henry's sepulchre symbolized excess bursting confines, as souls rot defied restraint, crownless, revealed as miasmic blight. England's respite proved illusory, scars generational. Mary, warped by maternal torment, unleashed zealotry as Bloody Mary. Elizabeth, motherless toddler amid caprice, governed warily, unwed from witnessed peril. Nobility eviscerated, lineages extinct, instability enduring. Ecclesiastical schism spawned centuries' strife. Precedents of caprice influenced successors, fiscal ruin burdened realms. Psychically, surveillance's pall lingered, trust fractured, authority suspect so endured Henry's shadow. Thus unfolds Henry VIII's verity, unadorned by mythos, a caution against power's abyss. Not charisma errant, but fracture profound, revolting in form and spirit, scarring contacts. History's softening veils a monster. Flesh, collecting serfs, terrorized queens, paranoid realm. Recall coffin's rupture as kingdom's metaphor, this unchecked dominion's visage, a perpetual admonition lest crowns cloak beasts anew.